overgekomen en komt net uit Rotterdam. En Ronald Giphart zal interviewen over haar succesvolle serie Bakplaten. En veel plezier zou ik zeggen. Ik geef nu de microfoon aan Ronald.
Ja, dat mag. Dankjewel. Eerst even in het Nederlands spreek ik een beetje toe. Ik ga zo in het Engels Rukmini interviewen. Als er behoefte aan is, zal ik proberen te vertalen als iemand het niet helemaal kan volgen. De bedoeling is dat niet alleen ik ga vragen stellen, maar dat u ook, als u een vraag heeft af te vuren, u niet schroomt, het even laat weten en dat we met elkaar een gezamenlijk gesprek van maken. Ja, zullen we het afspreken? Goed, wil ik beginnen met een welkomstapplaus voor Rukmini Iyer. So great to have you here in Utrecht.
Thank you for having me. This is an amazing shop. You're all so lucky to live here.
We are. It's one of the oldest cities of the Netherlands. And we're honored to have you here. And I would like to begin our interview by talking to you, about you, and then about your work, and then about your new book.
Of course.
All right. There's an expression in the Suriname language, and perhaps members of the audience will understand it. Where does your house live? Where did your house live?
Where does my house live?
Where do you come from?
Ah, okay. So I live in London at the moment. My parents live about an hour and a half away, and I was born there.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just moved house recently, so we're getting a lot of inspiration from this trip. Like, oh, those lamps would look really nice, and I'm watching how they. So yes, we're London based.
All right. And what is your first remembrance about food?
That's a good one. I think it's actually my first ever actual memory. There's a box of promotional cereal coming through the letterbox when I was a little kid.
Okay.
And I just remember this really nice packaging, new cereal, and I was like a little toddler being like, oh, this is like... So yeah, it was that. So.
And what kind of cereal it was?
Unfortunately, I don't remember now. I think it's probably a Kellogg's one, but it was very exciting when you're a kid and someone posts cereal through a letterbox.
All right. And how was your eating career? When you were a child, what were your favorites?
Well, it's a good thing my mom's not here because she just thinks it's the funniest thing that I've got into food. She said I was the world's fussiest child. Yeah, and I basically, because she was a little bit anxious. I think maybe some parents understand it's like, you're anxious around food, your kid gets like combative about it, and there's a war between the two of you.
Yeah.
And it was definitely war, so she'd take me to a friend's house, but you have to eat something. And I would go to a friend's house as a 5-year-old, I eat 1 pea.
One pea?
1 pea, yeah. And I was like, well look, my part of the contract's done, I ate something. But
and is your mother a good cook?
She's a fantastic cook. It passed this phase. And then I loved to cook, so learned to cook with her, we would cook together.
And what were her recipes? What were her
She's
dishes?
really adventurous. So she will cook from the Sunday supplements. In the UK, we have, I'm sure you have here, like the great weekend recipes in the papers. No, that's a good, okay. Well, I guess if you sometimes when they print them, you can clip them out. So she has these files of clippings from the weekend.
All right.
She would follow people like Delia Smith and not so much Nigella, more Jamie than Nigella. And
more Jamie than Nigella?
More Jamie. I was more Nigella, she was more Team Jamie. And she really inspired me because she had such a good collection, always wanting to try new things. So her background is obviously like she made really good Indian food, but she's also really good at Western food as well. So we could have either on the table at any point. And like, because I was born in the 80s, frozen food too. But
What?
Frozen food. You know, like for children, like you heat up chicken nuggets and stuff.
Oh, okay.
You obviously brought up better than me.
No. And when you were a youngster, did you have your eyes on a career in the food, or?
No, I really didn't know at all what I wanted. I think I wanted to be a vet when I was...
A vet?
Yeah, when I was a kid, because I liked animals. And then my science didn't go so well at school, so there was clearly no way I was going to become a vet.
So you became a lawyer?
Yeah, everyone does when they don't know what to do, actually. Law school is full of people who are just like lost. So I only did that for a short amount of time, but I was cooking so much while I was working in law.
Yeah.
I'd go home from the office every day. And
what kind of lawyer were you?
Well, only a trainee. That was a baby lawyer. So you train in for 2 years. You go in different departments, and I like uniformly disliked all of them. But there was a good supermarket on my way home, so I could shop and cook. and I'm sure you've got some of the books here in the cookery section, really elaborate restaurant food.
All right.
Because when you don't, I think when you're learning, you try and overcomplicate.
Of course.
So I was having friends around, I was making these like foams and gels and
Nice.
all around stuff, and my kitchen looked like a bomb site. My friends were like, wow, you made a lot of effort for like, dinner for, I was like, yeah, I know, eat, you're just exhausted. But it was fun, it's like a learning curve.
And was it nice on the plate?
Oh yeah, it was nice. I used to watch the TV shows where they do the very beautiful
Yeah,
presentation. I'd buy special glasses, and even at law school I was buying special crockery thinking,
Very good.
I'm going to serve it, what can I serve and what? So instead of law notes, it's like, here's my menu, this is a dish I'm going to put each dish in. I was taking it very seriously for a law student.
I read that you even thought about of going to a cookery school.
I did at that point. I went, there's the cookery school in London that Jamie Oliver went to. It's called Westminster Kingsway. So it's a very good cookery school. They've got a nice little restaurant attached. But I went on the open day and I was probably 24. And basically everyone there was a 16-year-old boy with their mum, like, who was got. And I was like, I'm so old, like, this is clearly not an environment for me right now. I will go and finish my lawyering.
Okay.
So eventually when I went to cook school, it was more of one which was for older people doing career changes, so I wasn't going to feel quite so left out.
Very good. And did you even think of taking part of MasterChef or something?
Oh, I did, yeah. On UK TV, I'd sent off an application when I was working at the law firm.
Yeah.
Completely forgot about it. And then a few months later, when we put the deposit down for cookery school, the grown-up one, suddenly there's this call saying, we'd like you to come on the show, and I had a good feeling about it. I had to put off cookery school to do the filming. And then, went on the show, which was pretty crazy.
You did?
Yes.
And which place did you enter?
Not too bad, I came 5th, so...
Okay, that's very good.
Respectable.
Ah.
Yeah.
Which season was it?
Oh my god, it was in 2013.
2013,
a long time ago.
Nice. And then you became a food stylist.
Yes.
What is a food stylist?
So, anytime you see a beautiful picture of food, or it can be a bad picture, but generally a beautiful picture of food on a billboard or in a cookbook or on TV, it is not usually the chef, the celebrity chef who's done it. You'll have someone called a home economist or a food stylist, and their job is just to cook for camera. So you cook the food very nicely, but you bear in mind that someone's got to take a picture of it. So it's a fun job.
How did you know you were good at that skill?
I didn't. But I did do work experience.
Okay.
I think, which is really helpful in any field. You go and make the tea, watch what's happening, see if anyone will let you do anything, which is usually a no. And then you can see what the environment's like. And I already knew I was a good cook. I really quite enjoy things being very visual.
Yeah.
So the idea of combining the two of those seemed much better as a career than having to maybe be a restaurant chef.
All right. And did you look a lot of pictures of other cookbook writers at that time?
Yeah, I had a good collection. My mum had a good collection.
All right.
But funnily enough, skipping forward to now, my dad is the world's biggest critic when it comes to cookbooks. Because I get sent them, and he'll start flicking through and goes, oh, well, I wouldn't eat that. I wouldn't have put it on that plate. What were they thinking? I'm like, Dad, just chill out.
But with your books?
Oh no, my books is like, it's not as good as yours.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
No, my books is, no, that would be so mean if it was my books. No.
So he's a proud father?
He's a very proud father, yes.
Okay. And then we come to your work. Your work's very, very successful. There's it's kind of genius how you have a plate with few ingredients, very simplistically, and I mean it in a good way. Yeah. Very tasteful, but that's a compliment. Brilliantly done. It's amazing. How did you came up with the concept?
Well, I think it was two things. One of them was, like I said, about doing the restaurant cooking, doing that very, very elaborate cooking. Your sink is full of dishes. It's not good for like your mental health to have your kitchen like that much of a state when you've just made one dinner. So, but on the other hand, when you make this elaborate restaurant food, you have a lot of different things going on. If you think of the fanciest restaurant you've been at, you'll have like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and someone's made 6 or 7 things to go on one plate. And that's why you go to a restaurant.
Yeah, and then a waiter with his pink, pointing out all the ingredients.
All the things, just make sure you don't miss that. Right? But I was thinking, like, when you're doing home cooking, there are ways to get that much flavour in without necessarily having to, you know, make so many different components.
Yeah.
So, for example, it's just some vegetables you put in a tin. Yeah, it's kind of boring. But then you think, oh, well, I'm going to add like a handful of toasted almonds. I'm going to add some lovely fresh herbs, a really nice dressing with lemon juice and, you know, really nice olive oil. And then suddenly all of these elements will come together. You've got something crisp, you've got something sweet, you've got something herby. Pomegranate seeds are just great for everything.
All right.
And then you've suddenly got something where you're like, no, every mouthful's really interesting, and I literally only have one thing to wash up. So in a way, these books were kind of like, well, how much flavour can I just put into the one dish? And the other thing, of course, is when you're busy doing a job, you just are tired at the end of the day, and you don't want to spend hours cooking. And in this, the idea is, ready meals are very popular in the UK, where you just like take the foil off, you put it in the oven, half an hour later it's finished.
Yeah.
But I thought with these, well, really, you're only chopping for 5 or 10 minutes. Standing up to, and then just goes in. So only a little bit more effort than
it's
already.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. It's new, and the book buyers and the audience loved it too, because nowadays 1 million copies of your books are sold worldwide.
Yes, and the Dutch numbers definitely made up a good part of that.
Yeah. We're doing good. And now it's time for your new cookbook, the Zoete Bakplaat.
Yes.
As it's called in Dutch. 75, wat? Recipes, ja. Dus er verleidelijke recepten uit de oven. What were your thoughts when you started this book?
Well, I just started seeing my partner Tim at that point, and
That's Tim over there.
Tim's over here. You can sit down if you like, darling. Or maybe if you like wanting to run away when I start talking about you. So we just started dating when I started writing this, and obviously if you meet a girl and she's like, I'm writing a baking book, there's a cake, it's like, oh, fantastic. Honestly, after about a month, we couldn't look at another cake.
Yeah.
We were both eating so many cakes, so many cookies. You get, I sound like I'm not selling this cookbook very well, but you get a sugar headache if you eat the contents of an entire book of sugar. It's nice, it's an occasional treat, guys. But it was, I've really not answered your question, have I? Just gone on a tangent about how much of...
How it started.
How it started. What I liked about the idea of a baking book, which was again my Dutch publisher's idea, was have you thought about writing a sweet book? And I was like, oh, I haven't actually, but that's a great idea. They're like, oh, go on then. So...
Let me excuse you for a bit.
Yeah.
Hoe kwam je nou erbij om dat voor te stellen?
Whose idea was this?
Nou ja, als je naar oven eet, dan denk je eigenlijk ook gewoon aan bakken.
Ja.
En we wilden meer. We just wanted more of the community.
That's very good.
Very good. Yeah, heel goed. But there's a fundamental difference between baking and cooking.
Yes.
But for baking, you have to measure everything, and 1 gram of sugar too many, and the whole dish is ruined.
Well, I wanted to take the same approach that I got in the other books, which, as we've said, it's just, okay, some stuff in a tin, but if you want it to be a full meal, I want some protein, carbohydrate, 2 or 3 vegetables because you want it to be healthy, some lovely flavourings, and in many of these books there's we call it an infographic, so you can build it in yourself if you want to freestyle away from the recipes. And I thought with a baking book, I really like breaking things. My friends say this is like the inner lawyer that's coming out. I like to break things down into their simplest components. And here with each chapter, so if it's on muffins, on cakes, on brownies, on cookies, there's just one recipe, which is like my perfect base recipe. And if you can get that right, which is quite easy because it's just very, very simple ingredients, then you just change the flavorings.
All right.
So if the brownies, for example, there's the ones we're going to try today. We have samples for you to try. So the ones we've got a walnut, mascarpone, and I'm called drunken cherries, which is very nice. But with that same base, you can put raspberries in instead. In the book, there's passion fruit version, pecan and caramel. But it's so simple because all you're doing is just changing a couple of things. And that's the idea, because that's kind of how I learned to bake from Mom. Very simple cake formula. And I thought, if you have a very simple cake formula, why can't you just have a very simple brownie, very simple cookie? So that was the idea behind it.
A touch of genius as well. What do your mother think of your books?
Oh, she loves it. She said,
Yeah.
it's so sweet how you keep mentioning me in books. And I was like, oh, you did teach me to cook, so it's fair enough. No, she's very proud. And
All right.
she has roasting tin Tuesdays every week where she'll make a dish from these. And if she has friends around, she will usually
Nice.
make them from and then she'll be like, oh, so and so and so and so come around, can you sign a book for me? So it's nice.
How is it to be a successful cookbook writer? Are you famous in England?
Oh, I don't think so.
Then you are.
Well, luckily for me, so I try to keep up with social media because I think it's a really
Yeah.
nice way to engage with
Miss
people.
Mini, your name is?
Miss Minifer.
Miss.
It was literally when I was just years ago before I even did this for work, and it just stayed. It was a nickname at university, and should be more professional really. But when people are sending pictures of the food, I always try to reply, and you know it's really nice to see what people are making. And luckily, again with Tim, when I met his mom for the first time, when I was introduced, she said, well, I got in touch with you on Twitter, and I was like, oh God, did I reply? Did I reply? And she said, yeah, and you replied to me. Thank goodness. So you never know who your mother-in-law's
Yeah,
going to be.
yeah. That's a good tip for the whole audience.
Get in touch, like, yeah, don't blank people in case.
So this is your 5th book. What will the future bring us?
Well, I'm working on an Indian cookbook.
An
at the
Indian
moment.
cookbook?
Yes, which is...
Which part of Indian is your heritage?
Oh, so my mom's from Calcutta, which
Okay.
is kind of in the east,
Yeah.
and my dad's from the south, in Madras. So they have quite different food cultures. Mom's really good at both, because she learned from my paternal grandma. And I just think that obviously it's very different the kind of food you get in an Indian home, wherever it is, compared to if you go to what we call a curry house, which makes me die inside a little bit every time someone says that. You know, where the food is just very rich and it's not really home cooking. But I grew up with such lovely, healthy vegetarian cooking that I thought I'd love to share that in a book, but also I'm always doing something a little bit different with my recipes. And I wanted to keep to the whole, is Wednesday night, I'm tired after work, can I make this in half an hour? Like, or is this low effort?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea from the book, but with a little bit more if you're having friends around as well.
And aren't you afraid that Indian food fundamentalists will judge you on the fact that you put everything in one tin?
Well, it's not a one tin book, I have
All
to
right.
admit.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's a big one tin chapter,
Okay.
but otherwise there's a chapter on one pan stir fries, there's a chapter on snacks, brunches,
All right.
weekend projects, because I think in a different way to these books, some Indian food does take a little bit more time, and if you're a more confident cook, it's maybe nice to have 1 or 2 chapters in a book, which is, look, you've got all Saturday afternoon, you fancy going into the kitchen, you don't want to sit down after 5 minutes. Here's a little task that'll take a bit more time, but it's a nice, you know, it's a fun task. I mean, I say this, Tim's been doing some of them, like peeling whole potatoes after they've been cooked. I'm like, yes, it's mindful. It's a fun task.
Very good. This was a bit of an introduction of your work and your writer as a food writer. Is er iemand die wat wil vragen? Of die hebt een vraag? Is there any kind of food that you really don't like, apart from the Dutch food?
Oh, that's so mean. I had some very nice Dutch cheese for breakfast. I have to say, maybe it's not very fashionable to say this because in the UK at least, now this is very fashionable, offal, you know, like tripe and things like that.
Lever and...
Yeah, the idea of that, I like a nice chicken liver pate, very nice, but like, if it gets too weird, or people are like, oh, I'm going to make a beautiful skewer with some chicken hearts, I'm like, I give chicken hearts to my dog, I'm just not going to eat that. So I'm maybe a bit fussy about like extreme offal.
And funny thing to know, the offal, the word, comes from the Dutch afval.
Ah.
Is what is cut out of the meat. So
Interesting.
few English words come from the net. Like lucky is a Dutch word as well.
Well, that's a lovely word to come from here. I think pajama comes from Hindi, which is also one of my favourite words.
Yeah, in that combination as well. Lucky
pajamas.
And offal.
The other one is I actually secretly, it's not a secret because I'm admitting it, I don't like avocados. I know, It's weird. You can't work in food and not like them. I just find them a bit rubbish. I'd rather eat a block of butter than an avocado.
Okay. Wow. I don't. When they first came into our country, I I think it's about 30 years ago,
Yeah.
40 years ago, then they were kind of tasteful. And nowadays
You
they
think
don't.
they don't taste as good now?
No.
Interesting. Yeah. When I was a kid, the only type I like is the one my mom makes. She'll take an avocado, she'll halve it, and then she'll make a mixture of cream cheese, yogurt, walnuts, and raisins, and then stuff it in, and then plenty of lemon juice. And that's really nice,
Yeah.
because it's enough to mask the avocado.
Goeie vraag. Nog meer vragen? Je hebt een vraag. Kom maar.
Was it a struggle thinking of lots of different flavour combos after like for baking tin?
Books. Yeah, to an extent, you're like, I've literally run out of ingredients now that will go with each other. But then on the other hand, because I quite like to experiment, even when I'm cooking from my own books in the kitchen, I'll just go, oh, I don't want to do that, I'm going to do something else. And then, so like new ideas kind of evolve as well. But I do like to spend a good long time with each book, kind of just really thinking through like blackberries, what does blackberries go? Oh, blackberries go well with bay, like my favourite perfume. You know, like you kind of make word association games with ingredients. But I have to say nowadays I do just check to make sure I haven't done it already. Because I'm like, that sounds like a great, oh yeah, I did it.
Answers your question, very good. Nog meer vragen? Iemand? Je hebt een vraag. Even lekker hard.
How long does it generally take for you to come up with a recipe and then to make it perfect?
How long does it take for me to come up with a recipe and make it perfect? So if I've done the groundwork before, like we were talking about, where I've thought like, oh, I want to make a curry. I think it would be great with aubergines, tomatoes, maybe some nigella seeds. What I'll do is have everything out on the counter in front of me and my laptop, which gets really covered in, like I should just buy this like indestructible laptop. And I'll try and cook in quite a natural way, but just make sure I put things on scales as I go. If I'm taking teaspoons of things, I write everything down that I do, but because I can't really think ahead about what I'm going to do, so I have to do it and then quickly write it down. And I've heard other food writers do this, and if they're making a cake or something, they've forgotten to write it, they have to look in the bin for how many eggshells have gone in, so they can see how many eggs they used. I've not got quite that bad, but if I do all of that and then make the dish and it comes out and it's really delicious, I think great, that's going in as it is. But I will obviously test it again, because there's always an opportunity to test for the cookbook shoot, because we cook all the food again for the shoot. And my friends and family test, and now that we have more budget, which is fantastic, I have like actual recipe testers, so I can send it to them, and they, even though they're kind of professional recipe testers, they are thinking about it as they would if they were just a home cook. So you follow the recipe very literally, and they're not allowed to go, oh, well, she missed that, but I know it. They don't know, you missed that, so that's how I'm going to do it. If I make it that first time and it's not quite right, then of course I'll tweak it again. But I do have a sort of 3 strikes and you're out rule. Like if I make something that I thought was a good idea in my head, and then after 3 times I've made it and it's still not working, I'm like, it's time to just maybe scrap this and start again.
So in a week or something, then you decide, I'll stop
Yeah.
with this one.
Yeah, I think it's just how, if I get bored with it, I feel like other people will be bored as
Alright.
well.
Very good. Goeie vraag. Nog meer vragen? Je hebt een vraag. Peter.
A long time ago I went to London
Yes?
and we went to a certain area outside of the center, which is I think called Surrey,
Yes?
and we had there a street filled with all kind of Indian shops with sweets and
Oh, yes.
herbs and so. Do you know if it's still there?
I'm not sure. Where is Surrey? Is it like north?
It was a long ride with the subtrain, something like that.
I'm not sure exactly where that might be, but there are a lot of areas, especially around the outskirts of London or Leicester, which have these really cool streets, which are almost like Little India, or a bit
Okay.
like Chinatown, but for India. So I'm sure it's probably still there, but I
We'll
can't
check it out
verify. Okay.
after the.
Do some research there.
Yes, thank you.
Well, a few years ago I was in England, in London as well, for the promotion of a book.
Oh yes.
And then we went to a street with only Indian restaurants.
Yeah,
And
Brick
one was
Lane.
the best Indian restaurants according to The Guardian, and one was the
Yes.
best Indian restaurant to,
Yeah.
and all the best Indian restaurants.
All of them. I know that's probably Brick Lane you were talking
Brick
about.
Lane, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're about to build a shopping centre or something there, which is sad. But yeah, I think maybe internal the restaurants win 2020, 2019, 2018. So same thing.
Funny. Oké, laatste vraag. Je hebt een vraag.
Very specific question.
Okay.
A very specific question.
How to make the salad with the chickpeas and halloumi.
Yes.
Sometimes it get very dry, and every time I find the worst ever. So and one question is, how can I make it more moist salad?
Heeft iedereen het verstaan?
So the question was like, how do you stop things drying out in your oven? It sounds like maybe, does your oven generally run quite hot? I think oven, like I've had this question before about like, kind of like generally about ovens, and I tested my mom's and my sister's and mine out of interest with like a freestanding oven thermometer, and it turned out that my mom's oven was 20 degrees hotter than mine on the same setting for 180. My sister's was 10 degrees colder, and consistent with that, mom found things were kind of cooking too quickly and maybe burning a bit at the temperature I recommended. My sister would always add extra time on. So I'd say if you notice that, always turn the heat down a bit, reduce the cooking time. And I mean, if you want to buy one of those like little oven thermometers, you can, but you don't have to, because if you notice it, just always, when I'm cooking at my mom's, I just always turn it down 20 degrees from what I think it should be or what the recipe says. And I think that will really probably help. That's okay.
Goed. Ik kijk nog één keer of er brandende vragen zijn. Nog twee brandende vragen. Oké, dan doen we nog twee vragen. Is hij?
What's my favorite?
Cuisine.
Oh, favorite cuisine. I'm here, so I should say Dutch, but I mean, I don't want to be, I don't want to suck up, so I won't say that. I got a similar one, which was if I could only eat one cuisine for the rest of my life, which I think is the same question.
Yeah,
I would go for Italian because, because you could have food from so many different regions. If you want something really like with those potatoes and cheese and like Alpine style, that's from the north. You want something like, you know, obviously it's pasta, but then there's lovely rice dishes, things with cauliflower, like and raisins. You know that Sicily counts, right? If we're going to go for the Sicily, you'd win. You'd totally win.
And perhaps an Italian cookbook?
I don't know. I mean, Jamie's kind of covered that market.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I do like a general dinners book, I imagine it will be like 70% pasta.
Oké. Beantwoord je vraag? Wat was voor jou zelf het antwoord?
Italian.
Okay.
Yeah.
En dan het meisje daarachter.
The question was what some of my favorite cookbooks aside from my own. I would say my favorite ever book, which I get so much inspiration for all of these, is The Flavor Thesaurus by Nikki Sagnet. I don't know what, I know it's published in Dutch.
Podium? Hoe heet het?
Okay, are we allowed to
De
mention
smaakbijbel heet het volgens mij. Ja, het is de smaakbijbel. Ja. Er staan allemaal kleurtjes op de snee, noem je dat, dus op het aan de zijkant. En dan kan je aan de kleuren zien wat je met elkaar moet...
If we're allowed to mention a rival publisher. But
they stop publishing cookbooks, I think.
It's this incredible book which is all about flavors and what goes with what. And I would say there's not a recipe writer living who probably doesn't use that book when they're stuck for inspiration. When you've got a newspaper saying, hey, you're meant to file this recipe tomorrow, where is it? And you're like, oh, it was meant to be a broccoli recipe and my brain has gone blank and I don't know what broccoli works with. So she'll have, broccoli goes with anchovy, broccoli goes with bacon, and it'll either be a really nice, like a scientific reason, something to do with flavor compounds, or she'll just say because she liked it because she had it on holiday once. It's a really nice, it's a very funny book, and you don't expect to be reading a little cookbook on the train or something and then laughing and people are like, why is she laughing at a cookbook? But it's very witty, but it's also very useful and for inspiration. You were saying when I think about like flavors and things, if I just need to remember what vegetables exist, I will also go and look at a book. So that's probably my favorite.
Ja, beantwoord dat je vraag? Heel goed. Dan wil ik dat we nu naar het volgende onderdeel gaan. Eerst dat jullie een enorm applaus geven als dank voor het interview. En dan dat jullie massaal in de rij gaan staan, want dat gaat dus gesigneerd worden. Rukmini gaat hier plaatsnemen. Volgens mij hebben we een hele line-up gemaakt. En, nee, waar dan?
Misschien eerst nog even proeverij.
Proeverij, yeah. He's very hungry.
Oh yeah, you should try some of the food.
Let's try some food. That's
Yeah.
better. Yes.
So we've got the baked mascarpone, walnut and drunken cherry brownies and the fig and fennel cookies.
Oeh.
Please help yourselves.
Ik ga even vragen aan de... Wie heeft dit gemaakt? Wie heeft... Hanna. Ga ik even naar Hanna toe. Hanna, kom er even bij. Want ik heb een kookboekenpodcast waarin we al kookboekschrijvers te gast hebben. En dan hadden we een vaste kok die dan had moeten koken uit de kookboek. En dan vragen we altijd, hoe was het?
It was pretty easy.
Excellent.
When you said it looked nice, yeah, it's your recipe. So if I can make it well, it's because you wrote the recipe well, I think.
Oh, well, that's very
Yeah,
kind.
because sometimes you make something and I will not mention other writers.
True.
Yeah, that's
Then you
like.
got like this list of ingredients and you're like, okay, how am I gonna make this? And it was pretty easy and really easy to make.
Great.
So yeah,
And will you make other recipes for me?
I'm sorry. I have this one at home.
Ah.
And I live very minimalistic, so I don't buy books or things that I don't need. But I took this one home with me, and every week I make like one or two because it's so easy. You just put everything on a thing in the oven, and in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you're done.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I arrive home after 7 every day. So I don't have a lot of time to be in the kitchen, or I don't want to be in the kitchen after having worked here for the whole day. So I just throw some things, yeah, and then I eat in half an hour. So I have this one at home. Yeah, I love it.
I'm so glad. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Very good compliment. Dank Hanna. Dank. En nou, de proef is in de pudding. Hoe smaakt het? Even wat, heel lekker, ja. Zal ik er eentje nemen? Oh, dit was het moment dat ik me hoopte aan.
Take both.
Ja, nu moet ik met mijn mond vol gaan praten. Terwijl ik liefst nu het hele ding in mijn mond zou willen stoppen. Goed, nu u allemaal een hapje te eten heeft gekregen, even straks de vingers een beetje schoonmaken voordat u een boek pakt. Dan moet u geen vette vingers op het boek hebben. En dan wordt kind of ask you to sit.
Yes.
And then the big signing can begin.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming.